a grand chapel bathed in golden sunlight, rows of elegant guests rising to their feet, and at the altar, a dashing billionaire in a crisp tuxedo reciting vows to his perfect bride. But just as the words "for better or worse" leave his lips, the chapel doors creak open, all heads turn. There she stands, a blonde woman in a simple blue dress, holding a baby, and the groom's voice cuts off mid-sentence. She hadn't planned on coming. For months, she told herself it wasn't her place, that he'd made his choice, that love didn't belong to women like her, women who didn't come from money, who didn't wear diamonds or walk red carpets. But then her daughter reached out with tiny fingers one morning, her innocent eyes a mirror of a man who once whispered forever under the stars. That moment changed everything. The woman, Anna, stood on the sidewalk outside the St. Matthew Cathedral. Her heart pounded harder than it had the day she gave birth. Her blonde hair, once curled by his hands, now danced in the wind, unstyled and honest. Her arms clutched the baby close, not as a weapon, but as the only truth she had left. Inside the cathedral, Blake Harrison, billionaire, media mogul, and the city's most eligible bachelor, was marrying Madison Vale, the darling of New York's elite. Cameras clicked, strings played, guests wept. His voice echoed steady and cold. Anna didn't plan on interrupting. She just wanted to see him one last time, to prove to herself that she could survive it. But fate had other plans. As she pushed open the heavy cathedral doors, the silence that followed was immediate and brutal. She didn't speak, didn't have to. Every eye traced the baby in her arms. Then the man frozen mid-vow. Blake. The color drained from his face, not because he didn't recognize her, but because he did. Because for a brief moment, he saw not just Anna, but every lie he had told himself to survive the choices he made. His bride turned, her smile stiffening, but Anna didn't move. She stood rooted in place, framed by sunlight, a ghost from a past too real to ignore. Some whispered, others gasped. Only Blake stood silent, lips parted, eyes locked on the child who had his exact storm blue eyes. And then, for the first time in his entire life, he stepped away from the altar before the ceremony had ended. Let me know when you're ready for part 2, The Missing Years, and I'll continue the story from where Anna's journey truly begins. The crowd at the altar was still, their gazes bouncing between Anna and Blake. Time felt as though it stood still for a brief, suspended moment. No one moved, no one breathed. Blake's hand trembled as he let go of Madison's. She didn't even notice. Her eyes glued to Anna, eyes that burned with disdain and confusion. Madison had everything. Everything that Anna had never had. The money, the status, the certainty of a life planned out before her. And here was Anna, in a simple blue dress, holding a child, a product of a past long buried. Blake's legs carried him slowly down the aisle, his footsteps echoing loudly, painfully. In the silence of the grand cathedral, Anna stood still, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath her. She wasn't the girl he had left behind in the shadow of his ambition. She wasn't the woman he once shared stolen kisses with beneath the glow of moonlight. No, she was the ghost of what they had, a reality he couldn't escape, and the baby in her arms. That was the undeniable proof. Blake stopped just a few feet away, his breath shallow, his face a mixture of shock and guilt. His blue eyes were locked on the little girl in Anna's arms, and for a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the room. The world outside the cathedral no longer mattered. Anna didn't speak. She couldn't. She had told herself 1,000 times that she was done with him, that she would raise their daughter on her own, far away from the life that had tried to swallow them whole. But the reality of the moment was more than she could bear. The past came rushing back in a flood of memories. Their first meeting at a gala, where she was an intern and he was the man everyone wanted to be. The stolen moments in hotel rooms, in back alleyways, in corners of the world that didn't ask for anything but the fire between them. But then came the distance, the cold calls, the missed texts, the secretive meetings that turned into one-night stands with women whose names she didn't know. And then, the silence. She had fallen pregnant and told him. But Blake had been too busy, too consumed with his business empire. He had promised her the world, but then the world became too small for both of them. So, she left. She moved away, cutting all ties, building a life she could be proud of. But the ache never fully disappeared. The ache of what could have been. And now, here he was, standing in front of her, trying to find the words that would explain the years that had passed, the reasons for leaving. But Anna already knew. He didn't leave her because of the money or the ambition. He left her because it was easier to forget the things that made him human. She was just one of many casualties in his quest for power. Blake opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. His gaze shifted to the baby, her innocent eyes staring back at him, as if questioning why he wasn't there, as if she had a right to ask why he had been absent from her life. Anna took a step back, holding her daughter close to her chest. "I didn't come here to disrupt your wedding, Blake," she said softly, her voice breaking only for a second. "I came here to give you a choice." Blake blinked, his face clouded with confusion. "A choice," he repeated, as though he hadn't heard correctly. Anna nodded, her heart thudding in her chest. "You can walk back down that aisle. finish the life you planned with Madison, and pretend like I never existed. But if you do, I'm taking her with me, and you'll never see her again." The words were harsh, but they were true. The billionaire's eyes filled with regret, his face sinking into a mask of pain. For the first time, the arrogance, the pride, and the wealth that defined him were meaningless. The only thing that mattered was the woman standing in front of him, the woman he had loved, and the child who was his. And then, without a word, he turned and walked away from Madison, leaving the future he had planned behind. The echo of Blake's footsteps filled the cathedral, growing distant as he walked away from everything he had once thought he wanted. His mind was clouded, his thoughts a whirlwind of regret, guilt, and a sense of desperation he hadn't felt in years. Madison stood frozen at the altar, her eyes wide in disbelief. She had no idea what had just transpired. She didn't understand the weight of the moment, nor did she know what Anna had said to him. Blake could feel the eyes of every guest boring into his back, but it didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered except the woman in the blue dress, and the child in her arms. He had spent years building a life around power, around control, around making sure nothing could touch him. But in that instant, everything he had built felt hollow. A house of cards ready to collapse. Anna was walking toward the exit, her shoulders tight, her face a mask of strength, but Blake knew her better than that. He knew the hurt she carried. He knew how much she had sacrificed for their daughter, how much she had tried to protect her from the world they once shared. And now, she was giving him a choice, one that he could no longer ignore. He caught up with her at the door, just before she stepped outside, his hand grabbing her wrist gently. She stopped, her back still to him, her expression unreadable. The baby in her arms squirmed slightly, as if sensing the tension in the air. "Anna, wait." Blake's voice broke through the silence, low and pleading. "You can't just walk away." Anna slowly turned around, her eyes meeting his for the first time since that fateful night when she had left him all those years ago. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the genuine need for answers, for forgiveness. "I didn't come here to be with you, Blake," Anna said, her voice calm, but every word carried the weight of years. "I came here for her." Blake swallowed hard, the reality of the situation dawning on him. He had never imagined a moment like this, a moment where his choices, his past mistakes, were laid bare in front of him. "I've made mistakes. I know I have," he began, his voice thick with regret. "But I'm here now, Anna. I want to be here for her. I want to be here for both of you." Anna's face softened, but she held her ground. "It's too late, Blake. Had your chance. You walked away when it mattered the most." A long silence followed as Blake searched for the right words. The words that could heal the wounds he had caused. The wounds he hadn't even realized were there until now. But no words would come. The silence stretched on, each passing second another reminder of how much time he had lost. Anna glanced at the baby in her arms and then at Blake, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the choice wasn't hers to make anymore. It was his. If you want a chance at being a father," she said quietly, "you'll have to prove it. Not to me, but to her." She turned, the weight of her words hanging in the air as she walked away. Blake stood frozen in place, torn between the life he had known and the chance to finally right the wrongs of his past. Weeks passed, and Blake's life returned to its usual rhythm, but nothing felt the same. He threw himself into work, into meetings, into the very world that had consumed him for so long. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the image of Anna, of her standing in that church, holding their daughter. He couldn't shake the feeling of being lost, of something missing. One afternoon, there was a knock at his door. When Blake opened it, he wasn't sure what to expect. But there, standing in front of him, was Anna. Her blue dress was now replaced with a simple coat, her hair pulled back into a messy bun, and in her arms was their daughter. "I told you I wouldn't come back," Anna said quietly, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of hope and caution. "But I realized that if you want to be part of her life, you'll have to earn it." Blake stepped aside, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'll do whatever it takes." Anna's eyes softened, but she didn't trust him yet. "Then prove it. Show me that you're not the same man who left us all those years ago." And so, Blake did. He spent the following weeks with them, learning what it meant to be a father, what it meant to put someone else's needs before his own. He was there, for every late-night feeding, every tear, every small moment that he had missed. It wasn't easy. There were times when he doubted himself, times when he questioned if he could truly change. But with each passing day, the bond between him and his daughter grew stronger. He had missed out on so much, but he was determined to make up for it. And Anna watched, her heart slowly healing. She didn't know if Blake was the man he once was, or if he could truly be the father he needed to be. But for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could. It had been 6 months since Blake had stepped away from Madison at the altar, and although the media still buzzed with rumors, Blake was no longer interested in their opinions. He had made a choice, and it wasn't about money or power. It was about family. Blake invited Anna to dinner one evening. his hands shaking as he prepared to ask her a question that had weighed on his heart for months. Anna sat across from him, their daughter quietly playing with the toy at the table. Blake reached across the table, taking her hand in his. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm here now. I want to be here for you, for her, for the family we could have. Anna looked at him, her heart full. I don't know, Blake, you've hurt me, you've hurt her. Blake nodded, tears welling in his eyes. I know, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be the man you both need. Anna's gaze softened, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. And if I say yes? Blake smiled, the weight of his past finally lifting. If you say yes, I promise I'll never walk away again. Anna stood up, walking over to their daughter, who looked up at her with innocent eyes. Then let's start with, today, she said softly, and that was all they needed. One step forward. Together, months passed, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. Blake no longer looked at his phone in every meeting, no longer checked the headlines for mentions of his name. Instead, he spent his time with Anna and their daughter, finding peace in the simple moments that once seemed so out of reach. Anna had forgiven him. But trust took time to rebuild. Every day, Blake showed up. Every day, he proved that he could be the father he needed to be, not just for their daughter, but for Anna too. Their love was no longer a distant memory or a broken promise. It was real. It was present. One sunny afternoon, as the three of them played in the park, Blake looked at Anna, his heart full. I'll never make the same mistake again, he whispered. Anna smiled, her hand resting on his. I know. And in that moment, they both knew that no matter what had happened in the past, they had built something stronger than they could have ever imagined, a new beginning, together.